Okay. Good morning here from St. Petersburg, Florida. We have the second ranking of the college football playoff top 25. I know it came out a couple days ago. Apologies. This video should have come out yesterday. But let's kind of talk about the new rankings and basically what it means for each conference. Big 10, Big 12, SEC, ACC, obviously Group of 5 when it comes to USF, and the AAC and the Sun Belt. But before I want to get started, their first college football playoff appearance, the USF Bulls, they have just been running through their schedule ever since I'd say really their only game since they lost to Memphis, coming out strong. They have a huge game this weekend against Navy, and I like the Bulls to keep rolling. Obviously, I don't know if Navy will be able to keep up with USF. I know USF has had trouble with Navy in the past, but I think this is a different year. And first off, this isn't the same old South Florida. We're going to talk more about them and kind of the mix between them and the ACC and the Sun Belt Conference, with JMU making a surge late here in the season. But first, we're going to address the top 5. Obviously, unchanged. Not really many people expecting it to change. I know people were saying that Texas Tech might have been able to, deserve that number 5 spot, kind of kick Georgia out of the top 5. But, I mean, realistically, Georgia had one of their best looking wins in past few weeks. Or in really since, I mean, probably their best looking win. I mean, pretty much all season they looked like a complete football team. I know that they were able to stretch out the win at Ole Miss, but there was a lot of issues going on there. I know Ole Miss is a great team, but Georgia's defense just did not look like the way Kirby Smart had, generationally and typically had his defense composed. Obviously, being kind of the main factor as to why Georgia was barely able to escape a win there in Athens. Obviously, still a great win. Obviously, Ole Miss being number 7 still. They've been undefeated since the loss. Georgia's been undefeated since their loss to Bama earlier in the season. But yeah, that really is what keeps them behind Bama, Texas A&M, obviously, and Alabama, both undefeated in conference play. It looks like they will be the ones in the SEC championship game. There's not really much competition for them end of season. Alabama might want to watch out for that rivalry game or that rivalry week. Obviously, Alabama plays Auburn. I know that those have been generationally, serving entertainment over the past few years. So keep an eye out for that. Obviously, Auburn with an interim coach ever since firing Hugh Freeze. Obviously, gave Georgia some fits. That was obviously with Hugh Freeze beforehand, but they also, Auburn gave some fits to Vanderbilt in the past week. Vanderbilt actually moves up to 14. They move up a couple spots. Obviously, Texas A&M has just been rolling through their competition. They play Texas end of the season. I think that's their last real test. And then they have the SEC championship game, which they look like pretty much a lock for. Even if they lose to Texas, I'd say they're pretty much still a lock. Really, if they lose to Texas and Georgia beats Texas, I say Georgia still could have a chance. I say Georgia could have a chance to sneak into the college, into the SEC championship game. But let's talk about it. So Ohio State, Indiana. Obviously, we talked last week that Ohio State really doesn't have anything on their record that says that they are better than Indiana. Indiana doesn't have anything on their record that says that they are better than Ohio State either. So we didn't really know. It was a stalemate. So keeping them at 1 and 2, obviously. I'd say just because of how dominant Ohio State has been all year against, pretty much the same opponents compared to Indiana. Obviously, Indiana has won over Oregon. Now Ohio State, with this Texas win, still or back into a quality win because Texas has now snuck back into the top 10 all of a sudden. So now they have that. So I'd say fairly similar opponents. Obviously, 10 and the 8 seed being kind of those quality ones for each team. But obviously, Indiana struggled against Penn State this week. That was not a luxury that Ohio State had. They completely ran through Penn State second half a couple weeks ago in Columbus. So I'd say that's really the difference maker. But we're going to have to see where it places them on a somewhat neutral ground in Indianapolis. I know that it's a lot more closer to Indiana in Bloomington than it is to Ohio State and Columbus. But despite that, Ohio's right next to Indiana, so I wouldn't, I'm not going to fret too much about it. It's not like anything that Georgia has had the past couple of years where they've literally played an hour from uh, their home field. But despite that, top five looks good so far. Nothing to really change them around. You could see some movement next couple of weeks in there, depending on how. I mean, really, the only movement we could really see is Georgia. They have some really crazy good tests. They play Texas, obviously, this weekend at home. And then they play Georgia Tech in Atlanta in a couple of weeks in Mercedes-Benz Stadium against Georgia Tech after their uh, somewhat bye week against Charlotte next week. But despite that, we're looking good. Obviously, Texas Tech, huge win over BYU, completely shut down the Cougars in Lubbock, Texas. A great win for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They move up, I believe, 2 spots. They were at 8, I want to say, first. They move up a couple spots, and a lot of people are making a case that they can move into the top 5 because of how just dominant they've been playing. But, I mean, realistically, man, I mean, they've just been playing really good. There's not much to say that you can really put them over Georgia. Obviously, the SEC is a completely different conference compared to the Big 12. So I just say we're gonna have to let the records show, let the records tell, kind of how the rest of the story is going to go. Obviously, Texas Tech, they don't believe they play any other crazy competition the rest of the year. I think they've kind of played their hardest battles. Haven't looked too much into their schedule. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. And a lot of people are saying Ole Miss is in probably the best position in the college football playoff right now, being ranked 7. Um, and realistically, it's not a bad spot at all because obviously they don't have any quality. I mean, they don't have quality wins over any of these top 3 SEC teams right now: Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia. Obviously, they have lost to Georgia, so they definitely cannot make the SEC championship game. But I mean, they have a favorable schedule. They play Mississippi State and I believe South Carolina next. So they're sitting, I mean, fairly well. They win those 2 games and they're pretty much in regardless. Um, and they could possibly even get a bye. Who knows? But despite that, obviously one of these 3 teams in Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia is going to get kicked out of the top 5, maybe 2 at most. I don't know. But yeah, no, Ole Miss is in a great spot. I really agree with the statement that was said the other night, how Ole Miss is really kind of in like a dormant state here where they're really just not going to move down. They're not going to move up. Obviously, Trinidad Chambliss and Lane Kiffin doing a great job in Oxford. But they're doing, I mean, yeah, they're set up really well. I like also Oregon. Oregon's position is looking good too. I know that they don't really duke out the rest of the year. They don't have any crazy tests. Obviously, they had their crazy tests earlier on the season. They played Indiana. They played Penn State when Penn State had James Franklin. That was kind of the last strong performance we've seen from Franklin and the Nittany Lions. But despite that, Oregon's also in a pretty decent spot. Notre Dame, obviously, they play Pittsburgh this weekend. But yeah, that's going to be the last of their real tests. So it looks like Notre Dame might be able to sneak in, depending on how Pittsburgh plays. But if Pittsburgh wins, now we're going to have even a bigger toss-up in the ACC because they will most likely move up. And then we'll have kind of like this huge like melting pot of Miami, Virginia, Louisville, Pittsburgh, and it's going to be a whole big thing. But yeah, obviously the ACC is representing right now. Texas, obviously, they have games against Texas A&M at the end of the season. They have Georgia this weekend in Athens, a huge road game. Arch Manning, we're going to see if he's going to be able to perform on the road against a top 5 team and a great team at that just came off their best offensive performance, I'd say, all season. They were Georgia, 2 huge 50-plus yard plays. Very rare from a Mike Bobo offense that literally is just a short, run the ball, screen passes, these short plays, and when they do try to stretch the ball, usually it's not able to connect. Maybe it's a little over, or 90% of the time the receivers just can't catch a deep ball. But their offense looked tremendous this weekend against Mississippi State. Obviously, great momentum going into Texas, or going into back to Athens to play Texas. But let's talk about this. So that kind of caps out, not talking about conference champions. It's just kind of talking about our first or 1 through 10 confirmed playoff teams as of now. Now, the 11 and 12th seed, obviously that's going to be Miami as of right now and USF. Miami is the highest ranked ACC opponent. But the interesting thing about Miami is that they currently are not in contention for the ACC championship game, having 2 losses in the ACC. I believe Virginia and Louisville or Georgia. Oh no. Apologies. Georgia Tech and I believe Virginia or Louisville, one of those 2 teams. I don't know if Virginia. I know Virginia might have more than one conference loss, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Georgia Tech, I believe it's still Georgia Tech, Virginia that are kind of projected to be the ACC championship game because Miami currently has 2 conference losses, so they technically really just need someone to lose an ACC game, preferably Georgia Tech, and they can get back into the ACC championship game. Now they can just kind of hope that Texas loses, Oklahoma, BYU, Utah, all these teams fall in front of them and they can sneak their way in. I believe they have enough quality wins, I'd say, to kind of sneak back in. Obviously, Notre Dame, USF. They do play NC State this week, which has been giving some fits to the top 25, especially Georgia Tech, upsetting Georgia Tech, giving them their lone ACC loss and their lone loss on the season. So that's going to be an interesting game to watch if Carson Beck and the Hurricanes can perform. I believe that game is going on in Hard Rock Stadium. I believe I talked about that on Monday. So keep an eye out for that game. Obviously, the 12th seed that is representing another conference champion as of right now is the USF Bulls and Byron Brown, Alex Golish, the guys in Tampa, Florida. Obviously, we're going to talk about that because the ACC, the AAC, and now the Sun Belt are kind of in this mix for who can get in. 2 of those conferences are going to get in, no problem. Obviously, we have the no question bids from the Big Ten. Lots of Big Ten teams in the top 10. Lots of SEC teams in the top 10. No question about them. Obviously, you have the Big 12. That's still lots of representation here. Obviously, Texas Tech, BYU, Utah. Obviously, Cincinnati, too. I don't know if Cincinnati's going to be able to sneak in, but, I mean, regardless, obviously, Big 12 looking great. And then we have, those are basically our 3 main conferences that are 100% in. Obviously, Miami. We talked about the ACC just now. USF sneaking in. I know JMU, even though they're not in the top 25, they are 8-1, currently sitting somewhere just outside of the college football top 25, and they are actually in the AP above USF. But when it comes to the college football playoff, that is all that matters. So here, literally all USF has to do is win out. They need to stop getting sabotaged by their own conference and just, win these games, dude. Because it doesn't look like Memphis is going to make the conference championship game, which is good for them. It looks like they might play Tulane. They just have to beat Navy this weekend and just finish out the season against UAB and Rice. And they're pretty much in. They just have to win that conference game as well. If they can get that as a home game here in Tampa, that will be huge for the Bulls. I know that. But regardless, it's looking back up for the USF Bulls, especially after that early scare against Memphis. Obviously, they have the loss to Miami, huge in Miami Gardens. But despite that, everything else looks good. See some shakeup this week in the top 25. We're going to have some top 25 matchups. Obviously, College Game Day is heading to Pittsburgh for Notre Dame and the Pitt Panthers. And obviously, Georgia, Texas, another huge one. Probably the best matchup of the week, Georgia, Texas. Obviously, there's a little bit of history with that dating back to last year, so I don't really understand why that is in College Game Day, but it is what it is. But we're going to have a great week so far. It's looking like a great we could have some shakeup with Miami and SC State. But regardless, looking like a great week. When is it not here in college football? We're going to see how it goes. Obviously, USF Navy, didn't even talk about that one. Yeah, that's going to be a great game too. But despite that, everything is good. And everything, we're excited for this weekend, excited for these matchups. But hope everyone has a great rest of their day, great rest of their week. Hope everyone enjoys the Thursday night game that's going on tonight. I believe that's Jets Patriots. We'll talk about more of whatever the hell aftermath goes on Saturday, next Monday, here on Mic'd Up Sports with Michael Schneider. Obviously, next rankings come out next week, November 18th, 17th. But it's been great. It's been Michael Schneider. I will catch you guys next Monday here on Mic'd Up. See y'all later.